Welcome back, everybody. I have a opportunity to speak to a wonderful actress, producer, somebody who has been in a ton of projects, and somebody who has one coming up tomorrow on October 13th. 13th, by the way, for me is a lucky number, so I'm hoping that that continues for your release as well, Mary Kate.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so welcome to the program, Mary Kate Wiles.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise. And the project that's coming about, that's a very interesting series, is the Wayward Guide for the Untrained Eye.
Yeah.
So it'll be available tomorrow. Where can people find it so they can go and tune in?
Yeah, so the series is actually, it comes in two parts in that it is a normal digital series with regular episodes. Those will be released on the Tin Can Brothers YouTube channel. They are the group that wrote and produced this project.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also has accompanying podcast episodes as well. So there'll be a regular episode each week and a podcast episode each week. And you can get the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. So be sure and subscribe in both places so you get the full effect of the story.
Okay. And is the podcast going to be kind of outside the series or still within the series following that same trend?
Yeah, no, it's in world, which is really fun. So in the show, my character Artemis and her brother Paul are podcast investigative reporters, and the whole show is about them going to this small town of Connor Creek and investigating a strange goings on, and they end up sort of getting more than they bargained for. And then so the show follows that like a show would, and then the podcast episodes are the in-world podcasts that they create in the show. And it really allows, like, you'll see there's a bunch of characters in the show. It's very fun. And the podcast sort of allows all those characters to like breathe a little bit more. Then you get to see a little more of them than you do in the series. And it just adds sort of an extra dimension. You definitely don't have to listen to the podcast to like follow along with the show, but it just kind of enhances the experience. And it's really fun.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. And on the series, based on the trailer that I have seen, and again, we're going to post everything right below the video, so please come and click on it. You are some of the actors that are in the series are actors that we've recognized and we've seen many places. Could you name a few that will be on there?
Yeah, well, a lot of actors that I've acted with before, like my friend Ashley Clements, who is in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries with me, my partner and his sister Sean Prasad and Sinead Prasad, they're a part of my group Shipwrecked Comedy, but also some other actors that I haven't worked with before, a lot of people from Glee, like Darren Criss and Titus Macon, Kurt Mega as well, as although I have worked with him before many times, he's great. And then my personal, I don't want to say favorite, no favorites here, but I did get to work with Sean Astin, and I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so that was a huge dream come true for me. So yeah, a lot of fun faces from different facets of entertainment coming together.
Yeah, and if anybody's a Flash fan, you're going to see Carlos in there as well.
Yeah, of course, Carlos Valdez, he's wonderful. Thank you for bringing him up as well. There's so many, I can't even think of them all.
Carlos, by the way, for me in Flash, I'm a Flash. What's the verb? I know for Glee, it's Gleek. I'm definitely a Gleek. I was gonna say that I'm a Flasher, but that sounds very.
That doesn't sound right.
Doesn't sound right. So I'm a Flash fan. Let's or a Flash mob. Either way, we'll look at it.
Sure.
Yeah. So and on Flash, on that series, I love so many of the characters there, but Carlos has been my favorite from the pretty much the beginning. So I'm very happy to see him somewhere else as well.
Yeah, I've heard great things about him. I've never really watched The Flash, but I know that his character is well beloved, and I can see why. He's a lovely guy.
He's a very, very lovely guy, and I love again a lot of the people on the CW, on Flash, on Supergirl. They are all coming from the musical theater background, so they all can sing, they can dance, they can act. It's my cup of tea. So watching in all of that is great. So I'm happy that you get to work with him as well. And Sean is awesome. I've been watching him since I think Encino Man is the first time that I've seen him. And yeah, I've loved him.
He's he's been in so many iconic films. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, on this show, all right, I call it the love of acting, and I love acting. The audience knows that I can shut up about it, but it would be interesting to know, where does your love of acting come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, grew up I grew up in dance classes and choirs. I was an only child, and I would sort of paint my face for entertainment, like in front of a mirror. So I definitely grew up, performing even from when I was little. Um, and I always say that it was seeing The Lord of the Rings for the first time in a movie theater as a teenager, which truly made me decide that, like, this is what I wanted to do with my life, even though I kind of had, been in a lot of plays, and I clearly like enjoyed performing on some level. But yeah, seeing The Fellowship of the Ring for the first time was just such an experience unlike anything I'd ever really had before, in terms of being so swept up in the story. And I just wanted to do that. I wanted to go on adventures, and I wanted to be a part of things that made other people feel so, taken away, like that movie did for me. But in terms of actual love of acting itself, that's such a huge question. I think I try to be a compassionate person. I was more compassionate in my youth. As I get older, I find myself becoming a little more cynical and annoyed with people. But when I was starting out as an actor, I really loved the idea. I just love people and how different we all are, and the little things that like make people individual, and the little habits or whatever. I just thought that was so fascinating, and I loved to people watch. And I love that as an actor, you will never be bored. There's such a wealth of information to be constantly finding out and learning as you play different characters. Like, I always think that, some of our most favorite, best movie stars, like Tom Hanks, like, he must be such a smart guy, because he's had to learn so many different, like, skills in a way. Obviously, you don't become proficient, like, at those skills, but you have to learn some amount of something to portray a character who, is a pilot or a doctor or whatever. And I don't know, I am a person who truly, like, loves life. I want to get the most out of life. I grew up in a smallish town. I moved to Los Angeles, and I love living in a big city because there's so much to do. There's so much to see. I'll never get bored. And I think that's how I feel about acting itself. It's just like, I'll never get bored. There's always something new to discover. There's always, like, someone else's perspective to investigate. And I think it makes you just like a more thoughtful person, I think, if you are a good and dedicated actor, because you have to put yourself in other people's shoes all the time. And I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, kind of diving into a few things that you just mentioned. So, Lord of the
Great.
Rings,
Yes.
now you get a chance to work with Sean Astin. So that probably was an interesting, dream coming true part.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then in terms of the you're a little more cynical now. It's an interesting statement. I can't let that one go. So why is it? Is it the product of the times that we are in right now, or is it outside of that? And as you're growing older and you're seeing, people around, that you have become a little bit more cynical. Where I still think you're a ray of sunshine. So
Thank you.
maybe a tiny bit more than you were before, but where is that coming from?
Both. I think it's both a product of the time we're living in, and also just, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are people that don't feel this way, but I kind of feel like universally, as we get older, we get a
Hmm.
little less patient about certain things. And, you just kind of find what's comfortable to you in life, and you kind of want to settle into that a little bit. It's been interesting, actually, considering, we're, in a pandemic, 6 months in, 7 months in. And so for the last few months, I haven't really been going out very much in terms of just like running errands, like normal day-to-day stuff that I used to do all the time, as I'm sure same with everybody. And when I do go out, I find myself getting so frustrated at just other people, you know, whether it's their driving or just like waiting in line, when people's weird habits, things that I used to would find like quaint or amusing now just bother me.
Mm.
And then I come back home and I go, oh, these 6 months of not seeing people has actually been a gift. So it's a good reminder, I think, that you know, I don't know. But anyway, just that sort of thing. I just get a little more annoyed with people's sort of antics than I used to.
Isn't that interesting? I've noticed that myself, in myself, and I I always find it peculiar because I would hope and I aspire that with years comes wisdom, and with
Mhm.
wisdom comes understanding of others, and with understanding of others comes patience and appreciation for their journey.
Mhm.
And one side of me strongly believes that and aspires to do that. The other side of me wants to call bullshit on all of it.
Yeah.
Uh, and those two sides are constantly at disagreement because I've always seen when people aren't being truthful. But the older I get, the more I want to call it out.
Mhm.
And I keep reminding myself of that's their own journey. It's
Mhm.
not your place, and you need to be understanding and compassionate. And I'm at that dissonance all the time. You find yourself a little bit in those ways as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that's we're only human, right? I mean, there are ways in which I feel like I am so happy with the ways I've grown and learned things. Like I used to be very naive and I never would, I still don't really like get into argument, pick fights with people or anything, but I never would ever have done that when I was younger. And I sort of, in certain ways, got into situations where I was taken advantage of because of that. So I'm thankful that I've like, you know, grown and gotten a little more self-assured and sort of learned to not allow that to happen. But on the flip side, then that means I also, you know, I'm a person with less patience than I used to have
Mhm.
and maybe a little more mean sometimes. But I don't know. It's just all part of growing and learning and changing. And, you
Yeah.
know, I think you got to take it and try and maintain some amount of being a good person while also, you know, allowing those somewhat negative things to like recognizing them and being like, okay, I need to work on this or whatever.
Yeah. Well, again, drama makes life, and
Yes,
drama
that's true.
allows us to grow and to kind of become who we become. And
Mhm.
I find that because of certain traumatic experiences that we've had in the past, they kind of act as a springboard.
Mhm.
And for some people, it shuts them down. For other people, it makes them
Mhm.
grow.
That's so true.
Um, if you're comfortable, was there an experience like that that kind of changed the trajectory of your life?
I wouldn't say that there's one experience. I think, you know, we're all such a amalgamation of a lot of different experiences. I mean, I always think that like I feel like the main like trauma of my life is that my parents divorced when I was very young, but not so young that I don't remember it. My first memories are of my parents fighting, and I don't have any memories of my parents happy together, which is something that continues to sort of not haunt me, but it's just a part of my life. Like I ran across some photos the other night. I was going through an old box of cards and notes and things, and I found these photos of my parents when they were together that my mom had given me. She had found and was like, "Do you want these? I don't want them." And it made me cry to see my parents, you know, happy together because that's not an experience I had as a young person. But because of that, and again, like that is something that has caused me a lot of pain throughout my whole life. But because of that, it's made me very independent. It's made me very self-sufficient. I think it allowed me to sort of develop this I don't know, personality that just wants to like go out and make a difference in the world. So like I would be a completely different person if my life had been different in that way. So I don't wish that it were different, even though it is something that was and continues to be painful and also just logistically a nightmare. You know, like when I go home for family, I'm an adult now and we still are kind of arguing over who's seeing who when and all of these things, but I wouldn't change it. And I think I think, you know, obviously I don't mean to ever speak for anybody else, but I think a lot of situations like that are, you know, things that are hard that people experience, like they just serve to make you who you are, I think.
Yeah. And the coach in me and a wannabe psychiatrist or psychologist would be a better word for it, wants to ask how that influenced your relationships, because on one hand that would directly influence the way that you would be in relationships. On the other hand, you're an actress and you get a chance to kind of live through all sorts of experiences that maybe help you. So have you found that being an actress and dealing with that you know, primal trauma allowed you to work through it and then have a healthier outlook now that you are in a relationship that you seem to be very happy in?
Oh, thank you. I am. Potentially, yeah. I don't know. I'm sure there's a certain amount of that. I also was a very good kid growing up, and I don't know where that came from really. I still don't like getting in trouble. I have like this mortal fear of getting in trouble, and so I've always really followed the rules, and continue to do so. And not only follow the rules, but like try to follow them to a T and be the best. And so I think acting is a little fun in that I can have the experience of maybe not always being, you know, a good person or following the rules and not get in trouble for it. So that's great. But in terms of relationships, I mean, I don't know. I never really saw myself wanting to get married because I didn't have a example for that, although my grandparents, there are some good marriages in my grandparents' lives, and I don't mean to disparage that, but I just got lucky. I mean, when I met Sean, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that he was the person I was going to be with forever. And I don't know what to attribute that to. We just got very lucky, I think.
Yeah, well, it doesn't owe an explanation. It just it is what it is, and that's great for what it is. So perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So you've mentioned that, you know, last 6 months have been very different for you, as you know, they certainly have been for many people. So what, as a person who's organized, as a person who's very driven, as a person who, you know, is a creative, what have you been doing with your time, and kind of, you know, how do you segment your day to ensure that you stay productive and, you know, feeling creative as opposed to the other ways?
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, I mean, obviously I haven't been having as many auditions as before, although there are like some self-tapes have started to come rolling back in, which is great. But excuse me. But besides that, my life hasn't looked too different, because I do as much as I can't sit still. So as far as acting goes, there are dry times, whether or not it's a pandemic, you know. And that's something I've experienced on and off throughout my career, and I think most actors have. So in those times, I've done my best to keep myself busy. And I have a Patreon, which is kind of my full-time job, really, in terms of like, it supports me pursuing an acting career, and I also have to do a certain amount of perks for the people that support me there. But those perks are all sort of based around me as a performer. And for instance, last year I started doing this Anne of Green Gables project where I read through the book series and I bring in other actors to read the different characters and stuff, and I add music and sound effects, and I try and make it sort of like an audio play, even though I'm just reading the text of the book. And that turned out to be a great thing to have to do during a pandemic because it hasn't changed. Like I'm still able to create that and have people send me their audio, and so that's still been going strong. And I'm so glad that that's something I started before I could have even known that doing audio work was kind of one of the only things that could actually happen. Yeah, so I've been, still working on that, and working with my group Shipwrecked. That's sort of where the biggest sort of hitch, I guess, this pandemic has brought, in terms of we had plans to make a big series this year, and obviously that did not happen. And the first few months were just sort of us going, okay, well, let's wait, surely like by the fall we'll be able to, and no. So that's been frustrating, but we've been doing our best to stay engaged with our audience and continue to develop some of our ideas, and hopefully whenever we're able to get back on set again, we'll be ready to go.
Yeah. Well, it's a good time for writing, so that's for sure.
Yeah.
And then again, being the person who cannot sit still, I'm always curious, are there shows that you're binging? Are there, and how much time do you actually allow yourself to sit in front of a TV where you're not actually being productive and you're just chilling?
I've gotten a lot better about that than I used to be. Before Sean and I moved in together, I didn't even have a TV. So that wasn't really, I mean, obviously you can watch stuff on Hulu on your computer or whatever, but I just didn't watch a lot of programming, which is not necessarily a good thing. Like obviously as actors, we need to sort of have an awareness of what shows are out there and like what is good and what's worth watching. That said, even though I do allow myself to watch more TV, it has usually been like Great British Bake Off or Top Chef, so it's not necessarily stuff that I'm watching for acting purposes. But I think because obviously the world has been so much this year and so sort of a lot to take in, I have found that I just want to watch something that is calm and doesn't, something that's not a super heavy drama. Obviously there are so many wonderful super heavy dramas, but I just haven't quite had the desire for that recently. But yeah, I feel like I work all day until I sort of make dinner, which I love to cook. So making dinner is kind of like a nice way for me to tune out whatever work I'm trying to do and just like focus on making something, and I enjoy that. And then after dinner, I'll watch some TV, and that's that.
What you said you love to cook. What's your favorite dish?
Well, I love, again, like I was saying before, I love to try new things. I love to experiment. I love to just try as many recipes as possible. But a dish that I come back to cooking again and again and again is this salmon with chimichurri sauce. It's honestly very easy, but it's so delicious.
Broiled, baked,
Baked,
grilled, baked.
Yeah.
We love salmon as well. Broiled salmon is my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm with you there, and it is so easy to bake. Right? It's so easy to make, rather not bake. Although it's easy to bake as well.
Yeah, either way.
As long as you have it ready, as long as you have, give it a little bit of time before you put it in, and then it's 20 minutes and you're done.
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool. So what's your, you've mentioned kind of the cooking shows and the British shows. What is the kind of last thing that you've binged that you truly enjoyed?
Like anything? I will say that earlier this year, Sean and I watched Watchmen, and it was incredible. I thought it was so good, and I did not know anything about the Watchmen comic. He did. He kind of had to explain some things to me, but I thought it was such an excellent show, and I'm glad it won so many Emmys because it was just astounding.
It's very good. I'm binging Emily in Paris right now.
Oh yeah, I've heard a lot about that. I haven't watched it yet myself.
I think you'll enjoy it. I've loved it. My wife started watching it on, I think, recommendation of somebody or somehow. And then yesterday night she told me, and she was already 3 episodes ahead of me.
Wow.
So I'm catching up desperately, but it's really, really lovely. Lily Collins is amazing in it, and it's just a really, again, talking about wanting to take yourself out of the current drama, put yourself somewhere else and enjoy it. And that would be a really nice place to escape.
Okay, I've got to check it out. Everybody's talking about it. It sounds fun.
Yes, yeah, it's really lovely. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to know, again, kind of going back to your acting, because you've been on different projects and you've been on sets that are small, you've been on web series, you've been on sets that are larger. Are there, in trying to share wisdom and acquired experiences, are there 3 things that you would say that every actor should know when they get on set, that these 3 things are most important from your perspective?
I think just being prepared, which sounds so obvious, but I don't know. I mean, I always try to be prepared, and I don't know. For instance, my boyfriend Sean auditioned for a very big movie last year, which he ended up booking. And the casting director, when he went in, was just like, "Wow, thank you so much for knowing your lines." And you just go like, "What?" Like, yeah, of course. But apparently there are people who don't, and I don't mean to, like, who knows, like, maybe those people are having a rough time in their personal life, whatever. Don't mean to, like, cast whatever on somebody for not knowing their lines, but it's just like that's like the number one, man. Like, know your lines, like, be prepared, show up on time. And I think that's something that we just take for granted, but I clearly makes a big difference. And I think it's important to be a person that is enjoyable to be around on set and to work with and to have a good attitude. That said, I'm not perfect. I've certainly had my moments where I got a little annoyed by something. A couple of little diva moments here and there, but I think, yeah, just being willing and open, and having a good attitude. I mean, again, it's different for everybody, but it's just like being on set is such a gift. Like, we spend so much of our time just trying to book a job. Like, it's such a wonderful thing to actually be on set playing a character. So, like, enjoy that, and I have learned that just like being somebody that people want to work with is going to pay out dividends in terms of getting asked back and getting asked to do other things. I don't know what my third thing would be. Those are my 2 things.
That's 3. You've mentioned the first is be prepared, be professional. The second is be somebody that people enjoy being around with. And then the third is you're on set. You're making a film. You're making a series. Enjoy.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 things. They're great.
Okay,
and then knowing that, again, you've played comedic characters, with Shipwreck and Tin Can, and you've played dramatic characters. Some actors find it, more difficult than others to kind of come back to themselves and get out of the heaviness of the character. So, what do you do to come back to yourself?
it's a good question. I think again, like, as I've gotten older, when I was younger, I was very like, and I think we all are a little bit, I was just like, oh, I am an actor and I'm giving everything to this role and I'm just going to live and breathe this role for the whole time I'm doing it, which is fine. And if that works for you, that's cool. As I've gotten older, I'm a little bit more like, well, I'm still me. This is a job. Like, I'm going to do what I need to do to get there on the day, and then I can go home and, do my thing. But obviously, it's just whatever works for you. People are different. I think it's easy to get wrapped up in a role. I don't know where. Yeah, it's easy to get wrapped up in a role And I think I want to so much as I can do it truthfully. And it's also exciting. Like I love the feeling of like just like getting in bed at night and just thinking about like how I'm going to play this character and like what fun things I want to put into it. But yeah, at the end of the day, you are you, and you need to be able to be yourself so you can be on time and be prepared and be all these things and whatever. So I don't know. I'm just trying to find a healthy balance in terms of like where I like to land on that scale. I think it's harder with dramatic, not harder, but with dramatic projects, it's easier to sort of get wrapped up
Yeah.
in the emotion and the everything of it. With comedy, it's kind of like everything's so lighthearted anyway. You're just there kind of having a good time, which is
Yeah.
because obviously there's a lot of skill that goes into comedy, but it's easier to sort of put it aside, I guess.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of, I know what uh, my own term that I refer to is, I know my vibrational resonance,
Mm,
and I kind of know, what me feels like. So if I'm not feeling me, my way to get back to this feeling of myself is to listen to certain types of music, or to pop
mm,
in and watch a musical, an old musical that's just the right energy and the right vibration, Sing in the Rain. It's these types of things that remind me of, oh yeah, that's me.
mm,
That's who I feel like, and it gets me back into that mode. So
mm.
it allows me to kind of leave all the drama behind and say, okay, I'm back. So that's kind of my process. It's always
I love
interesting
that.
to find out others.
I'm sorry, I feel like I don't have a very good answer for you, but it's been a little while since I feel like I was really wrapped up in a character in that sort of way. I definitely like, I enjoy sort of like dressing like that character, while for the time that I'm playing her, you
Mhm.
know, especially if she doesn't really dress the way I do. But then once it's done, it's like fun to put the vintage dresses back on and just sort of get back to what I like. But yeah, I think little things throughout your day um, that like just help put you in that mindset are always good and helpful and fun and right, like fun. It's fun to be somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Mm.
again, it's looking at your career, looking at things that you have done. You've done a lot of things, in terms of web. You have
Mhm.
a very large YouTube presence. You've done Kickstarter campaigns. So you've paved your own path in a lot of ways. To those people who feel stuck in a traditional environment and want to pave their own path, what would you say is the secret to your success and something that people can emulate?
Well, I again, like I just have to sort of give it up to the fact that I've just been very lucky in terms of the projects that I
Yeah.
have been a part of, which isn't to say like that I haven't worked hard to be a part of those projects because I have, and I've gone to a gazillion auditions that I did not book. I have put in the work, but at the same time, like you can't control what jobs you get. And so, it was because it's just because I've gotten all these jobs in the web sphere. I got cast in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and then that just took off. And then all of a sudden I had an audience. So like these things are things that I can't necessarily control. And I'm very thankful that they have, brought the stuff to my life that they have that's been so positive and good for me. But I mean, I think I think the internet is such a great place because you can immediately have an audience and find an audience that loves what you love, and you can put your work out and immediately see people interacting with it and responding to it, and that's so gratifying because like that's why we do stuff is for people to watch it. um, you know, so that's really wonderful. I think for me, it's been really important to me to be as genuine as I possibly can online with my audience in terms of that's sort of what I've really built my whole Patreon around is like being honest about what a career in acting really looks like because I think your average person in like Nebraska doesn't have any idea what it really means to be pursuing an acting career. And so I've tried to be very candid about that. And I think people have really responded to that. And I think people just can tell when somebody is genuine. Obviously, that doesn't mean you have to like share every aspect or facet of your life with the strangers on the internet. But yeah, I just think people connect to people who are genuine. And I think in that way, like sharing things that you love or creating art that you love, even if it's like very niche, like people love that and respect that, and it just makes you a real person, you know, like people are like, oh, I love Lord of the Rings too, you know. So that's what I would think.
So where do you draw the line? Where are your boundaries? Because a few times during the interview you've mentioned about you know, you want to be open, you want to be yourself, but you don't want to share everything. You want to be around people, but to a certain extent. So where do you draw your lines?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's certainly changed again over the years. Like I used to be a lot more. I used to tweet a lot more. I used to also, like when Lizzie Bennett was happening, it was also new and fun and exciting. And it's like I could tweet anything, and all of a sudden, all these people would respond to it, which is fun. And I think there's a certain amount of that can be dangerous in terms of like you can absolutely get addicted to that validation from Instagram likes or comments or whatever. And I don't mean to say that I'm not, like, I totally fall prey to that for sure. But over time, I don't know. I feel like less things are worth sharing like now than I did before. I used to be like, oh, this mango is delicious. And now I'm like, nobody needs to hear me say that. Like, who cares?
Yep.
I don't know that that's necessarily good. I think I should, in some ways, try to be a little more open with these things. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to tweet about a delicious mango when, like, the world is a nightmare, you know?
On the other hand, that may be a great thing to tweet about to remind people that there are other things that they could be enjoying during the pandemic.
That is very true. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I have a good answer. It's definitely been like a balance. I mean, I've always been very open about my relationship with Sean, because we work together, one, and because it's kind of would be harder to not share about it because it's such a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that, like, I know some people who don't want to come out about their relationships, and that's totally fine. I think it's just like whatever works for you. I feel like sometimes I err on the side of talking too much or sharing too much, and I should be a little more guarded. But in the same way, having a Patreon and like having that audience, because like I have a Discord for just my Patreon patrons, like that's really been invaluable because these are people who are super invested in me and my career, and it's like maybe better for me to go to them and be like, oh, whatever, I just like really wanted this part and I didn't book it or whatever, than like blasting that out to the whole world, you know. But I still am able to sort of share that experience and have feedback on, or this mango's delicious, you know, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I didn't book the audition, but this mango is delicious.
Right. I think having like a smaller community to sort of share the ins and outs and day-to-day things is good.
Which I think was, you know, kind of the driving force behind Facebook, of having a group of friends that you can actually share things with.
Yeah.
It changed
Yeah.
into something like all good ideas or all good intentions. They grow and they mutate into something that becomes hard to maintain. But that's a whole separate discussion.
Yeah.
If you had to kind of define yourself in 3 words, what would those words be? The first
Hungry.
3 that
Hungry.
hungry, good.
Dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
And and joyful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, again, speaking to you and looking at your career, I think that that resonates, that works.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And just to make sure that we're all on the same page, when you say hungry, you mean physically or in terms of achievement?
I mean both. I am always ready to eat, but yes, I was thinking of the quality that I keep coming back to in this interview about just wanting to do everything and see everything and try
Yeah.
everything.
That's great. I think that allows you to actually achieve something as opposed to sitting on the couch and binging, television, which I don't blame anybody for doing.
Right.
But
Nothing wrong with
there are
that.
doers and there are dreamers, and you seem to be the former. Uh, yeah, with certainly a lot of the latter built into it as well. It's a joy talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on.
Of
Best of luck with the project.
Thank
Please
you.
send me the link to the Patreon. I want to post it
Yeah,
right here as well, so people can
absolutely.
listen to you and learn from that and be a part of your community. So
Yeah, thank
pulling for you. Say hi to Sean and
thank
best of luck.
you. Thank you so much, Alan. This has been a joy.
It's my pleasure. And thanks to everybody for tuning in to another episode of The Love of Acting. We know you love this as much as we do, and this is why we do it for you. Thank you.
Yay.